I need to bring myself to the truth pulpit. It's as good a time as ever to say to those who are Checo Perez fans that I just want to say this, that from the really heartfelt sentiment here, from the bottom of my heart, I want to apologise to absolutely nobody. What do you mean apologise? Checo Perez is gonzo, ladies and gentlemen. The timing might not be right, but the news will drop in the next couple of days. ESPN.au are saying that we understand that Checo Perez will be gone before Christmas, that all they're doing is nipping and tucking, ticking and tying the numbers. Is he going to be an ambassador? What are they going to do with him? But rest assured, one thing you can take to the bank is that he will not be a Red Bull Racing driver in 2025. Oh, the humanity. What are we doing here, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, Cameron, you've been wrong again about this Checo Perez. Behave yourself. Checo Perez, he is gonzo, and quite rightfully so. Listen, what we'll never ever do on this channel is drink from the fountain of unreason. Checo Perez is gonzo, and quite rightfully so. It's a matter of time. That meritocracy train is never late. Ladies and gentlemen, what are we doing here? I've had enough. Oh, Cameron, yet again with the Checo Perez news. Well, that has been news because Sky have reported it. ESPN have reported it, so too Canal Plus. Sometimes if you're going to put on your journalistic hat, you need to wait for multiple sources. And I deem that those multiple sources aren't half bad. All sources are created equal, but some are created more equal than others. What are we talking about? Do you know what I mean? Checo Perez deserves a seat. He's gonzo. It is only a matter of time. Okay, so I haven't been right to 2 decimal places because nobody bats 1,000, but I digress. And if you needed further proof that Checo Perez is gonzo, you only need to look at Telemex, his sponsor's Twitter handle. They're putting out these bloody congratulatory statements talking about cuatro años históricos, 4 great years. If indeed Checo Perez was going on to the next year, why would they be doing victory tours, nostalgia settings, the likes of which we haven't seen since Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes? It's that sort of tone that Telemex are striking up, and they want to tell me that this is all rubbish, that Checo Perez potentially is going to stay on. Checo Perez will not be staying on, ladies and gentlemen. If Red Bull do that, they need to have they need to have a word with themselves in the accountability mirror, because that's nonsense. They've already lost half of their their staffs, their workforce motivation back at Milton Keynes, because they in turn have lost 40% of their bonus because of Checo Perez's not insubstantial underperformance season to date. Checo Perez, what do we do? Gonzo, Michael, and quite rightfully so. Yeah, they haven't announced it yet, but do you know what I mean? That train is never late. Go on, and let's talk about some Maximilian Verstappen whilst I've got some some emotional bandwidth left, because the ongoing beef between steward Johnny Herbert and the Verstappen family, that never abates, does it? It keeps going and going, and I don't know how I feel about this. I used to once upon a time like Johnny Stewart, but he does tend to inject himself into situations where he does not belong. If you are a steward, then why is he giving all of these statements to a gambling site? Okay, so he's got to fill the coffers. Everybody's got to make a living, and everybody has a mortgage to pay. But surely, if we're talking about objectivity, then Johnny Herbert as a steward needs to be held to a higher state of account, especially when he says things like this about Max Verstappen, some say soon to be 5-time champion. This is what Johnny said. It's all for Max Verstappen about intimidation. The McLaren is going to be a threat to him next year. We've seen that Oscar has the potential to win races and maybe a world championship, just like Lando. It sounds already like he's rooting for the papaya coloured team, indeed. And I don't know if you should be doing that as a steward, Johnny Herbert, especially if objectivity, the waters of objectivity, are those in which you wade. He continues, so when you're wheel to wheel like in Abu Dhabi, neither of you could give in. You heard the radio communication, and Oscar said okay when he heard that Max had been given a penalty. That's great. We've got someone else ready to take on Max. We've seen a shift in that this season. George has had a few issues and verbal confrontations with Max. That's exactly what Max has been doing so well for years. He uses all the weapons, including intimidation. Go on then, chat. You told me, is Johnny Herbert talking nonsense? I think you might be on the money here, but that it's Johnny Herbert, that's the principal point of contention, though. He's a steward, still a going concern going into 2025, and therein lies the principal point of contention from a Jos Verstappen perspective, father of Max. Why is he able to talk like this on the sport that he stewards? Surely there should be Chinese walls. If indeed you're a steward in charge, responsible, some might say, for critical decisions in the one that F's, how can you deem yourself to be objective and still talking in this way? Are those two things mutually exclusive? Herbert continues, because again, this article, The Telegraph, does diatribes for Herbert's not insubstantial faux pas previously. Herbert tells the story, his story at Coin Poker. Oh no, they've got it, haven't they? Go on then. So Herbert's talking to Coin Poker, for which I'm sure he will get a fee, but I digress, as he often earns some extra money by giving his opinion at gambling websites. Last season, the Brit caused quite a stir. He had been active as a steward at Mexico, where Max Verstappen received 2-time penalties, and then called Max Verstappen's mentality horrible at another gambling website. Oh, Johnny, it's not looking good for you, mate, the way that they've termed it here. Horrible. The Red Bull driver never found those statements, especially Herbert's position, abnormal. He pulled a long nose the following weekend by winning Brazil and taking a giant step towards the fair. Translation issues, gambling website. It's techie, this. I don't know. I really want to try and defend Johnny Herbert, but I cannot. It's his position. It's not necessarily what he said, but it's the coupling of his position as a steward, reporting ultimately to FIA President Mohammed bin Sulayem and or race director. It's the couplement of that in conjunction with, of course, the vitriol with which Johnny Herbert addresses one Maximilian Verstappen. Do you know what I mean? And Max Verstappen, it seems, has seen these comments and responded in kind, because Max is doing something of a victory tour over the past couple of weeks, isn't he? He says of his critics that those who criticise my driving style, well, what they don't have is the world championship mentality. And I'll get into my bag now. He's too personally involved to be. I agree with you, Tad. It's techie, isn't it? I'm not sure that stewards should be doing that. But again, if Mohammed bin Sulayem is setting a precedent, if past this prologue, then Mohammed bin Sulayem has disbanded 2 of 4 of the audit committee, right? So an institution stinks from the head down. If that's what Mohammed bin Sulayem is doing, always talking about not having enough money, 100 million is what the F1 gives to the FIA, then surely, of course, Johnny Herbert's going to do the same, is he not? And I'm not sure we can blame him necessarily for that. Don't hate the player, hate the game just a little bit, although I don't like the sentiments nor comments. Lawson doesn't. We'll talk about Lawson in a minute, Michael, I promise you. He's going to get techie as far as Checo Perez is concerned. But here's what Max Verstappen had to say. First, he talked about the papaya rules. He says, what are you talking about? They've missed opportunities left, right and centre. Lando Norris indeed had the opportunity to win himself a World Drivers' Championship, but McLaren, so brilliant were they at frequently seizing defeat from the moors no jaws of victory. He said that when I'm told that stuff by my engineer, I immediately say, just shut up. What is that supposed to mean? You're allowed to race. They should have solved all of that nonsense. Papaya rules et al. Much easier and better as a team. And Max Verstappen is absolutely right. I fear for McLaren, Zach Brown, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri to Andrea Stelli that they might come to regret all of the nonsense shenanigans, the indecision extraordinaire that they showed throughout 2024, because the windows of opportunity open and shut like this, right? Fernando Alplan Alonso, 2005-2006. He knew that those would be his last championships, only a year after having vanquished one Michael Schumacher, the original Reagan Meister. That's how flippant and temperamental, no mercurial, Formula One can be, if indeed you harbour aspirations of winning races and championships. Reporting on Zach Brown's comments and the general backlash he faced on his driving behaviour, Max Verstappen said this: Yes, but they don't have the championship mentality. That's why they talk like that. And I quote, I always go to the limit to get the most out of every race. And if I have to force it, then that's just how it goes. Sometimes you have to cross a line. Well, I do, mate. People will hate him saying that. Max Verstappen naysayers will come out of the woodworks, right out of the cracks like cockroaches and say, well, I told you Max is a line stepper. What do you mean? Which winner in history, F1 or otherwise, has not been a line stepper? Please see your Exhibit A, Ayrton Senna, each and every single time. 1990 was chaos, kept his foot buried in the throttle. Michael Schumacher, 94, Adelaide. 1997, Jerez. Sebastian Vettel, multi-21 settings. Each and every single one of the greats across sports. Each and every single time they line step, and I'm not going to have it any different. Of course they line step. What are we doing here? Do you want to win? Because if you do, there is a tax to be paid. Those are the requisite minimums, some will say, for winning. Have a look at Michael Jordan and the riffing that he used to give his opposition each and every single bloody time. What are we doing? Asked whether he had any regrets over how he edged Lando Norris towards the wall in Mexico, Max Verstappen said as follows: no, not at all in that race. I think I won points there. This is who you're dealing with. Don't ask Max Verstappen any stupid question. Was there advantage to be gained for it? Then he's going to go for it. And that's why so many people love Maximilian Verstappen all over the world. Makes no apologies for that. And I don't think he should. Nobody wants F1 snowflakery. I know there are a gazillion Drive to Survive fans who are new to the sport and don't understand because they weren't here in 1990 to see the exploits of an Ayrton Senna on an Alain Prost. They weren't here, were they? They didn't see bloody Michael Schumacher in 97 and what he got up to with Jacques Villeneuve at Jerez. They won't understand that if past his prologue, that drivers, no Chariots of Fire, have always been doing this and will always do this. This is not F1 snowflakery, not even in December of 2024. Max Verstappen continues. So like I said, I will always do everything to get the maximum result for a championship. And of course, sometimes you have to go to the limit or over the limit. Not everybody understands that. Not everybody has that championship mentality. Touche, Mr. Verstappen. Do you know what I mean? That's why I'm attracted to that dude like a moth to a flame. He's a winner. Do you know? Lewis Hamilton back in the day had a sit. This is what, listen, as ironic as it is, I will always draw a dotted line, a parallel one, between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, because there are many parallels, particularly Lewis back in the day. 2007 Lewis Hamilton. I remember when they told him to back off from Fernando Alonso in 2007 at the Monaco Grand Prix. He said, what are you talking about? Back off. Back off. Why? Why am I going to back off? Lewis wasn't listening to them then. And that's exactly what Max Verstappen is doing now. So all of the Lewis Hamilton fans that think they're massively divergent, they are absolutely the similar. They come from very different places, but they are more similar, especially young Lewis Hamilton. They're more similar than you would even know. I'm telling you, all of these exploits from Max, I saw Lewis Hamilton do back in the day when he was a young gun, 2006, 2007, 2008. He raced everybody else on that track without compunction, with impunity is how he'd go racing. And that's just what Maximilian Verstappen does. That's what the great ones do, is it not? Verstappen added the Mexico fallout. Here's what he says. He goes, 100% McLaren missed opportunities last year. They had such a good car, but I think it's also clear that they had a lot to learn, so to speak, to really constantly compete. Max Verstappen has said on a gazillion occasions, right, that it's all about consistency. Even a broken clock gets it right twice a day. What Lando and Zach and Andrea and Oscar didn't have, what their, how do I term this best? Where their championship ultimately fell down, the travail that mattered most was their ability to deliver racing, race weekend out. That was the problem. They lacked consistency because Lando Norris had it at, say, a Zandvoort. But then the next race weekend, how was he then? You've got to be consistent over 24 races, over a season proper. And that indeed, per Mr. Verstappen, is what ultimately Lando Norris and McLaren fell foul of? Is it not? Of course, they did well for the Constructors' Championship, but they could have prepared much better for the drivers, mate. And there it is. There it is. Max Verstappen nailing them yet again, and I love it. I love it. Oh, stop closing Max Verstappen. I'm here to listen. I'm here to win. That's what Max Verstappen says, and I can't talk against that. Running some into the wall, winning at cost, endangering another driver is accepted. So go on then, Ricardo, let's talk about it. This is F1 chap. I don't know. Listen, I know that a lot of people are just coming into the sport courtesy of Drive to Survive, COVID, the gangbuster season that was 2021. I understand that. And I understand that we all view F1 as a sporting endeavour through different lenses. I get it. I do get it. But this has always been Formula One. Now, look, everybody has a different lean politically, to use the euphemism, as far as their particular brand of wheel-to-wheel combat that they enjoy. I, in 1997, wasn't a big fan of Michael Schumacher because of the way that he raced my guy Damon Hill, and because of the way that he raced my guy Jacques Villeneuve. I didn't appreciate it. I thought that it was line stepping. I suppose as I've evolved as an F1 fan and maybe become more mature, so too has my taste as far as the particular brand of wheel-to-wheel combat of the automotive pugilistic variety that I like. It's changed, it's evolved. Now Max Verstappen, I said to a friend of the channel, Peter Windsor, last time we spoke, right? As far as Max is concerned, if I have an Achilles heel as far as my sports fandom, you could be an absolute scumbag. I'm not saying that Max Verstappen is right, but you could be, in theory, hypothetical games, an absolute scumbag outside of the cockpit. It could be that. But if every time you get in the cockpit, you're just brilliant, like, I'm going to lose my mind. I feel like the Senna martyrdom has something to say for this. Senna's like this. They make documentaries about him, right? He's the goated one. Mythical figure settings. Monaco qualifying 1988. Nobody remembers the time when he buried his foot in the throttle in 1990 and could have killed Alain Prost. Everybody just... Do you know what I mean? Because Senna, the mythology that is Ayrton Senna, everybody just gravitates towards it and remembers the highlights. And I feel like I'm not dissimilar. Yeah, does Max Verstappen overstep the line? He said it himself, but all at the altar of winning races and championship. And that ruthlessness and that will to win and drive, the understanding of the tax that's to be paid, is something that I will always moth to a flame settings. Do you know what I mean? Chiba, you're a legend. We'll get there in the end, I promise you. Go on then, let's talk about Liam Lawson, because you want to... who will replace Checo Perez? The honest truth is that we don't know, but all yuki, if we're putting on our journalistic investigative caps, is that it will be Liam Lawson. Now, I know Twitter went crazy earlier on, and Yuki Tsunoda was trending massively. All of the bloody screenshots of his overtakes on Liam Lawson at Suzuka, round the outside. Like, I get it. 6-zip is what Yuki Tsunoda is winning, or won, on or beat even Liam Lawson season to date in terms of qualifying. If you were to look at if both drivers were driving with white helmets and you didn't know, and you were just looking at them on paper, then you go Yuki Tsunoda each and every single time, right? It makes sense. Although the counter argument is this, that Liam Lawson doesn't have the same experience as Yuki Tsunoda, and that the difference in qualifying has been small enough to where you can say at some point in the not too distant future, per the Oscar Piastri thesis, that at some point you might expect Liam Lawson to be a better F1 peddler, more complete over the next 12, 24 months, say, than a Yuki Tsunoda offers. That would be the counter argument. But if you're doing spot, if you're taking a driver as at now, and the only objective is to win races or be a rear gunner, a proper wingman to Maximilian Verstappen, then of course you'd go Yuki Tsunoda. You couldn't make any other argument. It would be disingenuous to, therefore. However, sadly for Yuki, there are other objectives. You've got to bake in other bits and bobs. There are other elements that we need to factor into this root cause analysis pie. As an example, where were Christian Horner and Pierre Vacher? If indeed, for all of the chats that Helmut Marko's been giving, that Yuki Tsunoda impressed massively, that he's become more consistent, that his mental fortitude has done one of these, and his outburst, his volatility has done one of these. If that's the truth, where was Christian Horner at the Abu Dhabi testing post race? Well, he just jumped on the private jet and came home with Pierre Vacher. Again, another key person. Pierre Vacher obviously is the heir apparent to Adrian Newey's throne. So where were those dudes? If they were gonna analyse him properly, objectively, if that's the term of the day, then surely Christian should have been in situ. Wait around another 48 hours, just as Honda had asked you to. Honda demanded that you didn't make a decision before seeing Yuki Tsunoda test, and Horner, key decision maker man, plus Pierre Vacher, heir apparent to Adrian Newey's crown, king aerodynamicist at the Bulls that are red. They weren't even there. What are we doing here? I just feel like it's not fair. I remember I played football at a decent level once upon a time, and I remember I was having tryouts for a team. And I kicked it. I made this like 40-yard pass. It was incredible. And I remember looking on the sideline to see what the scouts were doing, and they weren't even looking because they'd already made their decisions that I wasn't good enough. And this feels like the same thing for Yuki Tsunoda. It feels like it's confirmation bias, F1, that they've made their decision, that they see Liam Lawson as the heir apparent, the successor to one Checo Perez, former Mexican Minister of Defence's throne. And that's just about it. There's nothing that Yuki Tsunoda can do, bless him. I feel like there's politics in there as well, though. The fact that Yuki is a Honda driver and Honda are no longer working, or will no longer be working with the Bulls that are red as at 2026. I feel like that's got something to do with it. Plus, by the way, Yuki Tsunoda, by dint of his relationship with Honda, brings in anywhere up to $10 million per year into that team. That doesn't go away. He doesn't need to be driving for Red Bull to accrue that $10 million That will happen anyway because he's in a Red Bull racing family car in RB Visa Cash App. So that has to play a part, right? I feel like everything's gone. I feel like Yuki Tsunoda is between a rock and a hard. But I really feel bad for him. But again, Piranha's tank settings right in F1. Some would say he should be lucky that he has a drive. Others speculate that there could be something else in there. Again, I don't even want to lean into that because I'm too emotionally fragile. Go on and let's talk. I literally needed help from Leclerc. What are we saying here? You literally needed help from Leclerc, so that could be slow down. Are we talking about Max Perez? Leclerc did. I don't know what you're on about. SBZ. Put that into layman's terms because my nutty mind can't compute it. I like Yuki, but he's too volatile. His fate is in the midfield. Bloody Nora Michael. Is he too volatile though? Is he too volatile? I think he's too volatile. Okay, so again, if we're talking about objectives, and again, you've got to frame the conversation this way, right? I think what Red Bull don't want to do, they cannot afford to cheese off Max Verstappen. You can't have a driver in there. You can't have Carlos Sainz in there because we already know that those two factions, being Sainz Senior and Jos Verstappen, didn't get on, did they? 2015-16 Toro Rosso settings. So why would you not learn from the mistakes of Christmas past if indeed you are Christian Horner? Particularly the year that they've had as far as misconduct gate. It doesn't make sense. I can't wait to see Lawson disintegrate. Do you think he's going to disintegrate, B. Menden? Is he going to disintegrate really? No, but okay, at the altar of Max Verstappen victory, he's not going to beat Max. Don't get it twisted. But he doesn't need to beat Max. They don't need somebody who's going to beat Max Verstappen, right? They need somebody who's going to do their job. When Max Verstappen DNFs, you need to be picking up 25 points, right? I keep seeing the stats. All of these bloody Checo Perez fans who have come to abhor, genuinely, all of these Checo Perez fans that want to talk all this stuff about sabotage and he deserves and whatever, that wade in the confirmation bias waters. I just can't even, it doesn't even make sense. When you look at how much that dude has materially underperformed, he's nowhere near to Max Verstappen. I can't believe they didn't sack him off post-summer break. You know what I mean? Something about in the second half of the season, all of the top drivers, apart from Checo Perez, won races. What? Lewis won, George won, Sainz won, Leclerc won, of course Max won, Lando won, Oscar won. Where is Checo? Checo didn't even come close, mate. It's like, what is the... Honestly, it makes no sense for me. Just get rid of it. I'm pretty done with this story, I'll be honest with you. I'm pretty done with this story because I just think it makes a mockery of... As if the sport needs any more shenanigans, right? Mohammed Ben Sulayem doing all of his disbanding the audit committee and... Like, we don't need any more of this. Put these young hunger drivers in there and let them have a go. What's wrong with that? Is that so unreasonable of me to ask? Very techie, always, Kayla. Very, very techie. Champ says, Yuki's Yuki. After all, no reason to go to a bridge. I don't understand, Champ. I don't understand the what you're alluding to there, sir. Tech. You guys, for all the lies and the problems, you can't have too good a driver and can't have a bad one either. Techie. It is techie, Daniel, and there's a hybrid. There is a halfway house, right? It's Goldilocks and the Three Bears thesis. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. And that's where I think Liam Lawson... listening to Liam Lawson, I think he's coming in there to be... If he's already said, in conjunction with Yuki Tsunoda, by the way, that he's coming in there to fight with Max Verstappen, that he's not afraid of anybody, but I think he doesn't understand the assignment. The assignment is to come in there and be a Rubens Barrichello to the Michael Schumacher. That is Maximilian Verstappen. That's what they need. That's what they're bringing in that second driver for. But who knows, eh? The F1 show is still a circus. Absolutely, B. Menden, it is a circus. But again, B. Menden, let me put it to you this way. Has it not always been a circus? Non-rhetorical question. As long as I've been watching, it's always been shenanigans, whether it was Bernie and Max, the Iron Fist in the Iron Glove, as they used to call them. Do you know what I mean? It's always been shenanigans and back and forth and Netflix and Drive to Survive. These things are nothing new, genuinely. It is chaos, but I don't know. Lewis did celebrate his win, but it was right. I mean, they were just all over the sensitivity at the time. Are you talking about Silverstone? Mate, I don't even know if we've got... It's a bit too techy. Let me tell you about this as well. Carlos Sainz, good news for once. Carlos Sainz in his sender, well, it's good news and bad news, right? But Carlos Sainz was given a heroic send-off by Scuderia Ferrari. Watching it was proper emotional. Seeing Carlos Sainz Senior and Junior drive around the bloody track, both in a Scuderia red F1 car. I don't know. If ever there were a way to send somebody off, then that would be it, right? Very evocative were those images. However, many people are still talking about Ferrari treachery, that they've done Carlos Sainz Jr. a mad disservice. And the irony is not lost on me, because in his podcast, when he spoke to the Nude Project podcast, Carlos Sainz said it best around his characterization of what F1 is. That indeed, if you harbour aspirations of being an F1 driver, then there are all these things that you can control. Of the whole, they say like 20% of it you can control. You need to be good. You need to make sure you win. You need to keep your nose clean, keep the car out the barriers, kiss some babies and shake some hands. There is all these things that are within your control. But he said there are about 80% of the bits and bobs, the variables in F1 are outside of your control. He's talking about timing. If you can be good, you can go and win the F2 championship, but if you win it at a time when there's no room at the F1 in per se, then what's the point? Please see as your Exhibit A, Teo Pourchaire, and your Exhibit B, Felipe Drugovich, both of whom are your two most recent F2 winners aside from Bartoletto just this 2024 season. So if you win at the wrong time, if you have all of this upwards momentum and have the backing of a team and a junior program, etc., etc., but if it happens at the wrong time, you're stuck in an F1 purgatory of sorts. And I think, sadly, the irony as far as Carlos Sainz Jr.'s predicament, the predicament that faces him going into 2025, is that right? He was really, really good this season. Pochard, all the problems, do you know what I mean? But for a bloody Las Vegas pothole, he would have been 2-1 up versus one of the quickest drivers that the world has ever seen in F1 in modern day, Jean Alesi. So how then does Carlos find himself in a Williams and not a Red Bull racing car or a Mercedes or even an Aston, anything other than Williams, surely. I mean, you've got Ocon in a Haas. That's probably a better seat than a Williams, you might argue. More organised, capital infrastructure, better set up as at December 2024. So I feel like Carlos Sainz has fallen foul to his own thesis. Good isn't good enough. You've got to be good at the right time. And sadly for Carlos, I don't think he has. Kaylee, you're a legend. Carlos himself understands that it was Lewis, so it wasn't exactly treason. He and Ferrari had a good relationship. Well, true, Daniel, but it depends on who you're talking to, and again, it depends on the lens through which you assess the decision to sign one Lewis Hamilton. Because if you're talking about a racing decision over, let's say, medium to long term, the next 5, 6, 7 years, then Lewis won't be around for that long, eh? I keep hearing rumour that they're going to sign him again, that they're already teeing it up to welcome Carlos Sainz back to Scuderia Ferrari. Can you imagine that? After Lewis goes away, bloody Dora. Ollie Behrman. That's not good news for Ollie Behrman, is it? Who'll be expected? Delusional 44 fans. Oh no, have we got some cult LHs in here? Carlos himself understands that it was Lewis. I don't know, I've read that already. Then yeah. But still, Carlos must be suffering 100%. He said that he was crying, didn't he? He already said, like, post-race at Abu Dhabi, he said, I've shed my tears. I'm not going to tell you when I did cry, but I have cried already because it's techie. Judy says, chat, I've Lewis sees a spot. He also goes for it. If Lewis sees a spot, he also goes for it. See Silverstone. Max does the same and always gets the blame. Max doesn't cry about it. He takes his punishment and he goes to the next race, period. True, Judy. I tell you what, my only point of contention is Judy. I've seen Max goes for a spot. Yeah, well, this is the point I was making, Judy, right? That they're very bloody similar. Telling you, maybe not this current iteration in final form of Sir Lewis, maybe not this bod, but rewind back, let's say, I don't know, 14 years, Lewis of 2010 or even Lewis of 2008, you barely recognise the difference between those two and their characteristics respectively as drivers. I'm telling you, they're very bloody similar. Hamilton's Godfather 14 championships speak for themselves. 14 championships. Are you talking about? Oh, go on and let's do the maths. So Lewis has got 7 and then 15, 8 constructors. I don't get your maths there. Lewis, go on then. Lewis has won 7 and Mercedes have won 8 with Lewis there, right? So isn't that 15 championships? I don't know. Maybe that's my maths being nutty. Let me know if my maths is crazy. Carlos is better than Lewis now. Oh my gosh, Michael. Let's not. Go on then. You let me know in the chat. Is Carlos a better proposition than Lewis? Look, all I'm saying is that if you're talking about them as an asset and it's a driving decision, then Carlos Sainz will give you not necessarily more in spot over the course of 1 year, but you're going to have him for longer, right? That's the issue. And I think, I don't know, if you a friend of the channel, Peter Windsor, who only cares for the racing portion of Formula One, cares not even an iota for the business and commerciality and shareholders and making Scuderia Ferrari into a luxury brand and all this other gubbins, doesn't care one iota for that, then of course you re-sign Carlos Sainz and be damned with Sir Lewis Hamilton. If that's the lens through which you ingest your Formula One and using which you make your decisions as far as which drivers you hire or fire, then of course you've got to sign one Carlos Sainz Jr. But you've got to re-sign Carlos Sainz Jr. But then I'd argue, here's my devil's advocate now. I argued with Mr. Windsor that if you are, let's say you're a director of a company, then you owe a duty of care to your shareholders to improve, to put money in their back pockets, right? To increase market capitalization. And by doing that, you increase the share price. Now, by signing, let me ask you guys the question. Who increases Scuderia Ferrari's share price more than Sir Lewis Hamilton and the prospect of a luxury brand with Lewis Hamilton at the helm? Who does it more, Lewis or Carlos? It's a no-brainer, isn't it? So if you're John Elkann, and again, you can hear them talking about this in real time, right? Justifying their decision to sign Lewis. But if you're John Elkann and you're having a conversation with Frederick Vasseur, and it just so happens that Lewis Hamilton is looking for another contract to sign, as we know he was ultimately, Anthony Hamilton went and had a word with Red Bull Christian Horner to explore the notion of having Max and Lewis in the same car. Never going to happen, but do you know what I mean? So if that opportunity arises, then you're John Elkann and Frederick Vasseur, then you take that every single time. Surely, Carlos is a fighter, ambitious, and as much as I do like Lewis, he's the biggest name in terms of media sponsorships and exposure. How can you not? There you go, Daniel. You said it more succinctly than I ever could. You mean 2 championships? 2021 was won by Max fairly and squarely, and the other championships are his daddy Schumacher championships. Net 945, of course, is leading into the polemic thesis that Lewis Hamilton, that's chaos. What, that Schumacher won all these well, Schumacher came back, did he not? Okay, so he's instrumental in laying the foundations of Mercedes. But lest we forget that Nico Rosberg beat Michael Schumacher, if I recall correctly, in Michael Schumacher's final season at Mercedes. So I don't think your thought experiment net 945 checks out properly. Would you argue? Are you arguing that? Yeah, I don't think that works, mate. Not quite. Well, then, by that logic, Max owes all his championships to Sebastian Vettel, who came before him, right? It's nonsense. It'd be disingenuous to argue that I think net 945. Do you know what I mean? Cameron Ferrari's not a Lux brand. So Miami, if you read their financial statements, they made clear. Okay, so these bloody headphones are getting on my nerves. So in their financial statements, so 2 things quickly to that point. When their financial statements came out, the reason why their share price did one of these wasn't that Lewis absolutely had. There was some of that attributable to Lewis Hamilton, the announcement that he was going to join Scuderia. However, the vast portion of that jump, that uptick in Scuderia's share price, was the fact that they'd forecast really, really good results. Better, it was a beat, right, as versus market analyst estimates. Meaning, therefore, that what they were saying in their statements as far as the numbers, both, and rhetoric, again, made shares do one of these, made people want to buy more shares. In there, they spoke specifically, I remember these lines verbatim, because I think it's a paradigm shift as far as how Scuderia think about Ferrari. Or Ferrari think about Ferrari. So they said specifically what they want to be going forward is not a sports car brand, it's a luxury brand. That's what they said in their financial state. There's always there's notes in their financial statements. Don't believe me, you can go and see them. I want to say it's their last year end financial statements. Their words, not mine. And I think that's significant because Lewis Hamilton slots perfectly into that. If that's your overarching strategic objective and you're concerned with a bit of a gap analysis, you're trying to build the bridge between here and getting there, then who better to help you expedite for that journey than one Sir Lewis, Carl Davids and Hamilton? Non-rhetorical question, chat. I mean that generally. Max is not at the time where he thinks he needs to go, and so needs to make moves like Lewis. Max is at the point where he wants to race first and foremost. In 7 to 10 years, maybe. Oh, we're talking about Max leaving. And that's not going away as a story, is it? Bloody Nora. Aston Martin. I read something today that said that Aston Martin is still in the hunt. Don't put it past Mercedes either. And Toto. Oh. Would Max leave though? I was listening to the James Allen on F1 podcast, and again, all F1 journalists are created equal, but some are created more equal than others. One of the goatiest ones is James Allen, back in the day, BBC settings and ITV settings. Actually, ITV settings more than BBC. And he said Max Verstappen, or one of the bods on his channel, on his podcast, said that Max Verstappen would be daft to leave before 2026 because there were all these conversations going on in the background speaking to the soft, vulnerable underbelly even, that is the Ford and Red Bull collaboration. How would you expect possibly Ford to come in, yeah, they've got all this expertise and whatever, but not knowing anything and not having perfect information. How could one possibly expect Ford in collaboration with Red Bull, with a bit of legacy Honda knowledge, to build a power unit for a new rule and reg set in 2026 that's better than Mercedes and Scuderia? This isn't me saying that it's not going to happen, because my crystal ball is as murky as the next person's, right? I don't know for a fact, and it would be foolish of me to say. But again, if I were a betting man, like to save a dying puppy, each and every single time I'm going to bet on Mercedes and Scuderia to build a better power unit in 2026 than Ford. No, Tom. Maybe that's me being a brand snob. Maybe that is me being a brand snob, but I just don't. I keep hearing it over and over again that even Max is visiting the factory to see their progress, right? To check in on them, to see if they're doing what they should be doing. I'm concerned. So if Max goes into 2026 with all the performance clauses in his contract, once upon a time I read that if he's outside of the top three, not even in 2026, in 2025, that if he's outside the top three after 3 races, then he can effect and null and void his contract with immediate effect. Jos Verstappen too has said that one day Max might go on a sabbatical. Those are the words that father of Max said. So I think these are all things, this isn't me saying they're going to happen, but things that we need to consider in real time. Because again, read the Unstoppable book by Mark Hughes, and they always put these bloody performance clauses in his contract. So paranoid is Jos in his conviction that Max's career could and may fall by the wayside in the very same manner that his did. Do you know what I mean? Giving him, like, deprioritizing Jos's career is what he feels. That's ultimately what happened, right? He didn't feel like he was getting the same parts as Michael, not getting the same priority. They were building the car in his image. That's why, remember 2022 when Checo all of a sudden had a bit of wind in his sails. Monaco, and he crashed, and then he was close to winning leading the championship. Maybe I might recall that incorrectly, but there was all of a sudden a lot of momentum behind Checo, wasn't there? Because he had the understeery car, and then all of a sudden he was. You remember all that chaos? And then Jos Verstappen was like, no chance. My son is the quickest one. Build the car for him. Bake it in so it's on the nose. Very oversteery, please, because that's how we'll get to the championship quickest, the line of least resistance. Even the reason why Jos is so vocal then is because PTSD fresh in his mind is the reason why he didn't fulfill his not insubstantial potential when he was a driver. Imagine Max pulls a game-changing move. Oh my gosh, Kayla. I think it might get techie. Maybe Ford told RB they want Verstappen there. Of course they do. But Max can leave. He's got his pick of the litter. They still think up and down the grid that he's worth 2/10 on the rest of the field. You know what I mean? And if you doubt that, you only need to go and look at Barcelona. Like all these different races, you can see him making the difference. Lando Norris, for the most part, especially in H2 of 2024, had the whip hand but couldn't. You know what I mean? I don't know. He couldn't. Matt's going to put GR in the effing on his head in the war cam. Take a seat 2026. And Matt spoke to that, didn't he? He said, I'm all right with George, whatever. We spoke after the race and all's good. We'll be back next year. But I don't think Max... no. He won't be... he won't be ceding to King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk. Not anytime soon. There is no love lost. I don't think there's ever been any love lost. You guys have heard me say here that I quite like that George has no fear. I think we need... Look, here's my thesis. Let me put this forth and you guys tell me if I'm being noddy. The great ones need an antagonist to see exactly how bright their flame burns, right? Like, go back in... Past this prologue, this is the oldest truism in sports history, if not life. Joker needs a Batman. Muhammad Ali needed a George Foreman. Floyd needed a bloody Diego Corrales or a Canelo. Jordan needed a Larry Bird and a Magic Johnson. Do you know what I mean? Like, every LeBron needs a Steph. Every great, to show how great they are, will need like Sir Alex Ferguson needs an Arsene Wenger. Man United needed an Arsenal. Like it always goes that way. I'm trying to think of a good North American analogy. You get the point. I won't labour it. Every single good or great sports personality needs an equal and opposite to just show how good they are. You can't see how bright the flame is burning unless it's dark. You need a yin to the yang, a contrast, a juxtaposition of a sporting athlete even. And Max, whilst last year he was brilliant, right, in the RB19, super composed, destroying the field to the tune of 20 to 40 seconds each and every single time. That, in my humble opinion, is not when you get to see the raw, unadulterated brilliance of a Max Verstappen. When you get to see it is when Lando's coming, right, a charging, fire-breathing dragon in F1 peddler that is Lando Norris with a full steam behind him and all of this momentum. When he's coming and all of a sudden it looks tentative and you got the likes of Will Buxton saying, I don't think Lando Norris can win, I think he will win. Do you know what I mean? Is this sort of rhetoric that's being peddled, and that's the narrative that you've got to tune into F1 because Lando's brilliant and he's got the best car and he's fast for days and he can take it to Max. And then you see the stakes, right? And all of a sudden it's baked in this uncertainty. Maybe, hang on a second, I know Max is brilliant, but maybe Max can't win. All of a sudden there's everybody questioning the conventional knowledge, the generally accepted thesis. Do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you get a Brazil. And Max is stressed. He doesn't know what's going to... Is he going to win? Is he going to be able to hold off Lando Norris? Has he even got the car underneath him to win races and therefore championship? There were all these questions, right, that nobody knew. And then Brazil happens and then you see what time it is. And that's what makes... It's not the drive by itself in isolation at Brazil that makes Max Verstappen brilliant. It's the circumstances around it, it's the trying circumstances, the adversity, the fact that there was now pressure, that Lando Norris was breathing down his neck, that 90% of the F1 community, aficionados and all, were saying that Lando Norris was going to win the Drivers' Championship because he's got the fastest car. Yeah, they can do the hindsight 2020. Everybody can be a Monday morning quarterback, but go on my Twitter, you can see me picking apart people saying this in real time. Will Buxton, no less, legend of Formula 1 and F1 TV, he said that Lando Norris was going to win the championship. This was the generally accepted consensus, was it not? And then Max goes and does that at Brazil, not despite the adversity, but almost because of it, because he weaponizes it. That's what I mean. You always need a Joker to your Batman. But I would say that the Joker to Max Verstappen's Batman wasn't necessarily Lando Norris, kind of to a certain extent. But the biggest portion of that Joker was the circumstance that it was difficult, that it was misconduct gate, and it was Christian and Jos, and then Christian wouldn't let Jos in the car in Austria do you know what I mean? It was all like, it was friction and rancor, and that Maximilian Verstappen managed to weaponize that throughout 2024, especially in H2 in a car that wasn't fit for purpose, that was nowhere near the quickest. And you could argue that car is probably the third or fourth quickest way in H2. Max just gets it done. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean. It's the goatiest ones have this ability, per Simon Barnes and the Meaning of Sport. Brilliant book, go and read it. The goatiest ones in any sport have this ability to extract the best out of themselves at the times where there is the most adversity. Not all points, not all races are created equally, right? Canada early on in the season was worth 25 points. So too was Brazil. But the Brazil 25 points, because of the pressure and the circumstance and the season crescendo and the stakes and what it meant, it was more, and it was monsoon and everybody thought Lando was going to win all of a sudden and Max didn't have the cut. That was the Joker, and that Max goes and does it again. Oh, stop glazing, Max, they will say. But because Max goes and does it again in monsoon conditions, I'm like, I melt away. Like, I'm like, oh my God, do you believe that? It's no, it's bonkers. Yeah, and certain Michael Schumacher also preferred more oversteer than understeer, like Senna. Jos always complained about how he could not drive Schumacher. Exactly, champ. It's chaos. It is chaos. Right, chat, you guys have been legends. I've been talking for long enough. Thank you for indulging me and back and forth with me and fact checking me. Checo Perez, imminent news coming soon. ESPN Australia has said they expect the news to come before Christmas. This is timing differences now, not difference in absolute terms. ESPN AU say it will happen. We will hear the news before Christmas. Other sources are telling us that the decision's already been made, but they're just not announcing it. Canal Plus are saying that we should have heard today potentially, and Sky Germany is saying that we can expect to hear by the end of the week. But a decision has been made, and I think, gun to the head to save a dying puppy, I think Checo Perez is gone, so he's soon to be replaced by Liam Lawson. Oh, and by the way, Isaac Hadjar is not listed, is he, as a Campos Racing competitor for F2 next year, and he didn't win F2, meaning that he could indeed compete in it next year, but he's not registered. It's Marty and someone else whose name Marty and Lindblad, isn't it? Matthew says, is Max wrong? People want, thank you sir, again, far too kind as always. People want to babble on about good morals when it was Michael who won 7 titles by whatever means necessary. Leave the morals at home. Racing has grown. It's grown men, not boys. I don't hate it, Michael, I'll be honest if you check. It's weird. I don't want to, I keep hearing, I hate proselytization. I don't want to tell you or anyone else how they should watch their F1. But I mean, because I've been here so long, watching it as near as makes no difference, all of my life, 100 gazillion thousand years, like I just feel like I've come to, it's an acquired taste, that understanding, seeing like in any sport, seeing Floyd used to do the same in boxing, right? Like he would bend the rule if there was the opportunity to. Please see for Victor Ortiz fight. Max, I mean, I don't think this is just Formula One that we're talking about. High level sports is difficult enough as it is, as is life. So why would you make it more difficult than necessary? If indeed there are rules out there that you could bend / break and get away with it to your advantage, to your durable competitive advantage, then why the heck not? You know what I mean? Right, I'm going to run. You guys have been legends. Thank you so much. We go again tomorrow morning, hopefully by which time we'll have ourselves some news imminently about one Checo Perez, because the world is waiting. F1 fans can only wait so long, right? Patience is a finite resource, and of that I have none left, particularly pertaining to this instance of Checo Perez, man formerly known as the Mexican Minister of Defense, who's been underperforming materially all season long. This fiasco, Red Bull Racing, Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, Charlie Mavija, Oliver Mintzlaff, Mark Mateschitz, has gone on far too long now. Put us all out of our misery, including one Checo Perez. Telemex tweeting out today the old congratulatory Cuatro Años Históricos tweet, 4 historic years, sadly for them and all related parties. As far as Checo Perez PLC is concerned, that's exactly what Checo Perez's career is. History. What are we doing here?